One of the first advice you get when going to Dubai is to forget Uber and install the Careem app instead to move around the city. Created in 2012 by former consultants, Careem quickly grew in the region to serve 100 cities and eventually being acquired by Uber in 2019 for a whopping $3.1 billion. Our guest today is Nelio Leone. Nelio came from a corporate background to join Careem in their very early days. As head of marketing for the brand, he oversaw one of the fastest and most staggering startup growth in the region's history. What's amazing about Nelio is that he didn't stop there. After leaving Careem, he went on to leading the growth of laundry app Washman with tremendous results, to then found his own full-stack marketing agency. This is a story about unlocking phenomenal performance, pursuing opportunities, determination in achieving success, and a marketing stunt so cool that it even was retweeted by Elon Musk himself.
Brought to you by Scopernia, this is the Future Club, the podcast that uncovers how leaders future-proof their businesses. Here's your host, Jeremy.
Nelio, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I'm going to start with a very quick question for our audience. Can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Definitely. So, my name is Nelio. I'm a growth professional. I love everything that is related to growth. I've started my career in corporate environments, in L'Oreal and in the headquarters of Chanel, both Chanel and L'Oreal. And then I had a unique opportunity of joining a startup in its early days. I was one of the first head of marketing, and that startup, during the period I was there, we scaled it from 8 people to 3,000 people, and from like just a couple of cities here in the Gulf region to like hundreds of cities all across the MENA, Turkey and Pakistan region. That company, that startup, was recently bought out by Uber for $3 billion. And when I left Careem, I really started getting a gist of everything that was concerning digital and especially marketing. I understood that there's a lot of people out there, especially founders, struggling with marketing. And after that, I really focused so much in learning digital marketing, growth hacking, growth marketing, really going super deep into all of these practices. And then 2 friends of mine asked me to join their company as head of growth. That company is Washman. It's a laundry application. And we managed to scale that company from like 5 to 7x in less than 14 months with 3 things: 1 smart intern, Instagram ads, and a festival hat, like a festival headgear. Then after that, I decided that I understood pretty much the playbook of scaling companies rapidly and bootstrapping and being like super lean. So I started Urban Monks, which is currently it's an agency where we help founders really unlocking all the power of their growth engine. And we do it with a very simple formula. It's brand, storytelling, performance marketing.
That's it. All right, cool. We have it all. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Let's rewind a bit and go back, not to the very beginning, but to the beginning of your career. So you're Italian, right?
Yes.
You were born in Italy, and when we discussed, I quickly understood that you had a very international path. So you studied in Canada, you studied in Italy, then you started working in France for Coty, if I'm not mistaken, then Chanel, then L'Oreal. One thing that struck me is that how in which context did you grow up in that really facilitated and motivated you to go out there and go internationally and discover the world and those companies?
Wow, this is a very interesting question. And it really comes down to probably one factor, which is my mom. So I come from a very uninteresting small town in Italy, which is like pretty much a suburban environment. not very pretty, not very interesting. And it was very difficult growing up there, at least for myself, because my mom, she's like from German origins. My grandma is like 100% German. They lived in Germany. And I always had this calling of like, hey, by the way, this is not the world, this is not how things are supposed to be. And that gave me a very strong jet fuel to go out there. And I had this urge, like literally was an urge for many years, that I needed to get the F out. So the farthest I could go, that would really quench that kind of thirst. As you say, I started so learning French. Then I went, so I met my girlfriend back then. Now she's my wife. Moved to Paris with her. And then from Paris, I went to China for an extended period of time to learn Chinese. Came back being fluent in Chinese, like learning Chinese in the back, like Mandarin in the back of cabs. And then I came back, and my focus was really to go and do business with China. Then realized after a while that pretty much this was happening and then I found myself here in the region.
So you were working at L'Oreal, and L'Oreal sent you first here in the region, in the Middle East, right? How did that happen? Because that's how you arrived in the Middle East, basically.
Yeah, totally. Basically, when I joined L'Oreal, I was in what they call like the international marketing team, and where they do all the product development. So let's say if you are developing like a cosmetic, well, you're going to talk with the labs, you're going to like talk with the factory that produces the packaging, you're going to design the packaging. Like it starts from scratch, and then until you deliver the product to the countries. Then that's when they told me that there was like a position that was opened on back then it was like Latin America and Middle East and Africa. It was like one region.
Wow. Okay.
And so I took that opportunity to take that position, where it basically was like how to tailor marketing strategies for the region, and where you were basically in touch constantly with the subsidiaries, where you would explain them the launch, tailor the marketing strategy, communicate with the international marketing team. And I found that fascinating, because you were talking like with GMs and head of marketing, and like in the morning you would speak like, I don't know, like with these guys in I don't know, in Saudi Arabia, and then in the evening you'd speak like with guys in Brazil, and it was like fascinating. Plus the traveling, it was really, honestly, was a very, very cool experience. And then what happened is that since I developed like a very strong affinity with the market here, because I was learning Arabic, and so I was just like dropping few words of Arabic back then, and doing like random conversation with the GMs and with the marketing teams here. L'Oreal decided basically to divide. It was a moment where they divided the Middle East and Africa was becoming big enough to then become just one region in itself.
Yeah.
And then what happened is that since they put like an MD that was extremely experienced, especially in Latin America, he was looking to build a team, and I was like one of the first guys available there. He said, "Hey man, do you want to build this together?" And I said like, "Yeah." That's when then the MD, after doing 2 or 3 years with them and just building, going from Morocco to like Saudi to like Dubai, and working with very closely with the subsidiaries and with the general managers of the subsidiaries, he told me like, "Man, we need someone in Saudi, like stable there, that can really help crack the market and give us like proper customer insight," because back then it was kind of a black box.
Yeah.
So I came here to Dubai. I was based in Saudi, but kind of like was always here for meetings, etc., because the headquarters were here. And then, before I knew it, 2 years passed. I really enjoyed a lot my position in Saudi. And then I met Mudassir. I actually saw Mudassir, the founder of Careem, talking at a conference, and I was completely mesmerized. I was like, wow, like, plus coming from L'Oreal, which is a very traditional company, it's like very retail heavy and very brand and retail. Like this is the formula. This guy leaving McKinsey to start like a random app and ride hailing, I was like, wow, like if he's leaving his job, why wouldn't I? So last thing I knew, I went to him and I said, "Man, you're looking for someone for marketing?" And lucky streak, like they were looking for a head of marketing, so I joined them.
So and how was so that's when you joined Careem, and how was the company when you joined, and how was it when you left? So
when I first joined, So I'll just give you that. Okay, this is so I went. So I had met Mudassir like really randomly at a conference. Then I applied to the company. I was invited for an interview. I went there. Passed a set of interviews, etc. It was really cool. And then I met Mudassir, and he was talking about like, yeah, so we want to build a founder of entrepreneurship. We want to build the PayPal mafia of the Middle East. And he was like putting all these names that for me back then I didn't have any clue, Kawasaki, and then the other guys like from Silicon Valley of Peter Thiel, and I was like Elon Musk and whatever. And back then there was not such a buzz like right now. So I was like, okay, PayPal Mafia, entrepreneurship, Middle East. And I was like, wow, this is even more interesting. And I was just, I swear, just behind him, over his like left shoulder, like we were in the most curated meeting room of the office, the wallpaper was coming down, like was coming off. And I was like, so, and I felt this really weird thing. Is like, should I actually I trusted him, and I really knew that like he was onto something, and I felt it. I really recognized that this was something, because an Stanford guy, serial entrepreneur that leaves McKinsey to start like a random app in a shabby office. Like, man, like these guys are not dumb. Like you're not dumb if you're accepted to Stanford. You're not dumb if you go to McKinsey. Like there has to be something. And his vision was the first time that someone would actually talk to me about these things, and I really felt that even if that train looked a bit shabby and not very sexy, that was the train I couldn't miss. And thank God I made the decision to take some days off from my work at L'Oreal and to go and just work with them. And the working environment was simply like, wow, like those early joiners, and we were like, I think just a dozen or some more, or a bit more. But like what the interesting thing is that while in L'Oreal, I always had the feeling of being like like in the room I was kind of just my comments or whatever. I felt like I had like a sort of edge and felt like a bit smart or whatever, because I knew a lot of languages and I was well traveled or whatever, blah blah blah. I came to Careem, and just like 12, 15 people, I felt intimidated by these guys that were around me. Like there was one guy that at 22 years old, he exited his first multi-million-dollar business that sold to, I don't know, like Nestle or Danone or whatever. Another one that was Georgetown graduate. She was like into investment banking for years. Then she went into the Pakistani intelligence. One after the other, everyone had achieved something that made you feel like, okay, like just
Now we're talking.
now we're talking. And I felt I felt so blessed, because especially at the beginning we were like such a very hardcore group of people. And because we had the same kind of psychology, same like kind of high achiever, high like let's build something that matters. And we all left our corporate job, consulting job, to really build something that we could show the world what this region is capable of. And that having that Uber and us being the underdog, and just with a couple of laptops and an office which wallpaper would come off and still kick Uber's ass. Like, man, that was like the best mission that you could give to a hungry individual, that like to hungry individuals that want to achieve something in their lives.
No joke. And can you give me an example of one of the what you would consider the greatest or the best achievements that you and the team did when you were at Careem? I think there is the one that I have in mind. I think is something that Elon Musk even himself retweeted, which is kind of awesome.
No, but I think, to be honest, I think that was definitely the most memorable achievement. And it didn't even come from us directly internally. It was actually like an agency that we worked very closely with that came up with the whole concept, with the idea, with the execution. They did pretty much like the whole thing. But what's more important is not that there's one achievement that is noteworthy. What I realized with Careem is not about that single shot, that single silver bullet. It was all that constant iteration, experimentation of failing, and then boom, get something that works, and then failing, and then work on that something that worked, and then doubling down, failing, then boom, something else. And it was kind of cyclical, that we would always cyclically come with like great stuff after having a lot of failure. And the fact that we were so allowed to fail and to test up until we got it right, that was like, man, that was in itself the biggest achievement of the company, because a company that gives you so much freedom at a bunch of like 25 to like 35 years old, super hungry millennials, individuals that want to achieve something, that was the real remarkable thing. And if there is another, so of course then there is like the slingshot, what everybody like now refers to, was part of a whole process of branding that we've created over like more than a year. And that branding process, that real big reflection on how do we make our brand significant, was really the whole base of the iceberg that nobody really can see. That's where like 80-90% of the work went, and then the 10% kind of catalyzed into one video that went super viral. But that one video was the result of that 99% of work, failure, thought process, and building an internal culture that would allow even for a video like this to go viral and to be pushed out in the market.
And that's what I think is really interesting. It's also a discussion that we have had also on the podcast with Mashal Wakar, is that we usually are confronted with the great successes of startups or individuals, great achievements, that one thing that went viral, but we overshadow all of the intense work that has been going on for months and sometimes years that allow that one single success to happen. I mean, nothing. I really do not believe in luck in those kinds of things. Of course, there is always a question of timing and being at the right time at the right place, but the hard work behind it cannot be overshadowed. Definitely.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because then, and it's really funny because it's a sort of chemistry, like all these ingredients, like work, and then all these ingredients coming all together at the right time, at the right moment, with the right people, and then everything, all the stars are aligned for it to happen. It's a black swan. Like that slingshot is simply a black swan. As a matter of fact, even the agency after, they did like a lot of great things after. Of course, great videos, great stuff, but not like that's the only video that Elon Musk retweeted for some reason. So what I'm just saying is that there's not like one element of the formula that would bring to that success. It's really a combination of efforts, of like an intense effort that is not one person, it's not one team, it's like it's a really team effort, and then all these things align, and then you have that black swan that happens. And it honestly, and it's not even luck. Like you can't call it luck, it's like it's just the way the effort, all that 1% catalyzed into something, into one thing.
And for the listeners, we'll put the link to the slingshot video in the show notes, so you can watch it if you haven't seen it yet. But awesome, and so everything was going great, and you told us in the introduction about the numbers and how much Careem grew when you were there. But why did you leave at some point?
So there were two elements of it. You get burnt out because the pace is so intense that it's very hard to sustain it for a long time. And the churn rate at Careem, I mean, it's not a secret, were extremely high. So I was there for like 2 years, and they used to call me a dinosaur because I was there 2 years.
Wow.
Because the natural selection would, like, it was very difficult. It's very difficult to be in a startup that scales so fast and to be for a very long period of time, because your scope of work changes very systematically, your team changes, the equilibrium is always like changing extremely fast. In 2 years, I changed 5 different bosses, or 5 different team heads or whatever. So just imagine the level of stress you go through. It's something that it's not sustainable. So clearly, and I think it was it was known. Like Careem is not something that you would do for like 5 to 10 years. Then there's another aspect. It's about mutual fit, right? So there
Yeah.
is the aspect of there are people like myself that are extremely good at that stage where you're launching things, where the shuttle is launching. And that's what excited me. That's what made me leave a stable company. It's because I went in for the high, like not for the high, but for the adrenaline rush of being in a SpaceX that was about to and
Yeah.
feeling like everything vibrates and everything gets in. Then once you're into out of orbit and you just like go and it's just optimizing and you're just like this with your friends inside and gets boring. Like, once we made it to the unicorn status, I mean, what else was there? I mean, for me, it was pretty much mission accomplished. We launched a brand. The brand became probably, and I was director of brand and organic growth back then. And basically, mission accomplished. I mean, what else can I do better now? Now it's only going to be, oh yeah, now the green, let's put the ribbon and let's change into, then it's minor things like,
Yeah. It's
but
optimizing, really.
it's
Just you said it.
optimizing. But
Yeah.
that launch and that creative space of building something from scratch and making a dent in the history of marketing in the region, that was done. So
And
so that's when I realized, and also the team changed. Like the people that you attract in the propulsion phase are extremely different. Like all those super smart individuals that I would like be intimidated by my teammates. Then I didn't feel intimidated by my teammates anymore, and so I just realized, it's not like, why
it's
would
not
I
for you
be
anymore.
in a, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Why would I still be here? I mean, I think my time it's done. That's it. And I started to become very interested about whole other topics, like an whole other tribe of people. And so my interest was actually making me dream more than my daily job. And that's when I realized, man, I need to figure something out. I don't want to be, coming to Careem cannot be a job. It's like it's my baby, and I would have never be able to treat it as a job, as a 9 to 5 job or whatever.
And what I find quite amazing is that you joined Washman not a long time afterwards, and you managed to repeat. I'm not going to say the same success, but the same pattern of success to grow the brand. So, how did that work out? How did you manage to repeat? Did you use a lot of the things that you implemented at Careem at Washman, or did you really start it from the ground up?
So Washman was very interesting as an example, because between Washman and Careem, between Careem and Washman, there was like a whole period of research that it was a lot of soul searching. So basically, imagine yourself, like you come from corporate where the whole dream for me was like becoming this international general manager or MD. This is where I would see myself in the next, like, I don't know, 15 to 20 years. Like, that's it, like getting, whatever, LORAL, good position, international career. I was really in for it. Then you get like into this kind of tech ecosystem where you see those kind of superhuman people coming together to build like superhuman stuff out of a laptop. This is what really bluffed me, is like, how is it even possible? Like, we didn't have like expensive computers, we didn't have expensive office, like out of, like, it felt that was out of almost thin air, which was not thin air, of course, because it was like a lot of brain power, but with very small tools and very small budgets, we were able to pull off that. I had to take a moment to just like let that sink in. And that's when I got started targeting a lot with all these, I don't know why, for whatever reason, all these like digital nomads. That's when I started reading like, Tim Ferriss and all of these guys. And I started realizing, oh my God, I love this whole culture of digital nomads. And that's when I started like really trying to decode the movement and how these people can actually work. And so I went to Bali, I went to Chiang Mai, the capital of the digital nomads, and I started really understanding, like meeting people and reverse engineering how they would make money, because I found it impossible. Like, it was like almost defying the law of gravity of seeing these guys in board shorts going to surf and making like $1 million a year or whatever, and saying, hey, yeah, I don't have I'm running my business from a phone or from a laptop out of a beach. I was like, what are you in, man? Like, how is this even possible? I said, so I'm going to do two things. Either I'm going to find a formula that will allow me to do this, or at least I'll debunk the myth, but I will not leave that question or that space unquestioned or unexplored. So this is what I did. I invested some money, went there, did some like courses on all sort of stuff like drop shipping, then going into start your agency, whatever figure, like the 6-figure agency. Um, I did them all. And then I started realizing that, yes, there were actually business models that were extremely lean. And I met uh, equally awesome individuals that, at 22 years old, out of an investment of 50K, they built like a brand that is selling $25 million, and it's the leading beauty brand in direct to consumer on a Shopify store. And like this, I started meeting like other guys that were like into Amazon FBA and either e-commerce or social selling or course selling or whatever that is. And man, like that's when I started, like that's when it was started ticking. I was like, wow, like this is, and that's the beauty of it, of getting to know those people, is that at least it's possible. Like they expand your perception of what is possible and what is not possible, and just by doing that, you increases your chances of success. And this is exactly what I did when I came back here to Dubai, because of course after 2 years, 1 year and a half being on and off Bali, Chiang Mai, coming back to Dubai, like not really like stable income, but just freelancing gig here and there, then my wife was like, man, you can't be doing this, like, and plus I can't be staying here while you just go around and whatever, so come back to Dubai. And so I had to come back here, and that's when my two friends from Washman, they said, hey Nelio, you're looking for a position, we're actually looking for a head of growth, and you've done this at Careem, plus your kind of weird experiments with all these digital nomads, freelance, or whatever you want to call it, seems, I don't know, pretty interesting, so come over. And basically in 14 months we grew Washman by almost 7x, and we did it with simply like an iPhone, a smart intern, and headgear that I used in festivals when I was still partying back then.
Can we? And what is the headgear about? How does it look like?
So basically, what we did at Washman, like I really started to understand the inside, because there was a real strong pattern that came from the first 2 or 3 months that I started like really learning about the business, that there were two things. Like laundry is super boring. Like all the competitors, have you ever seen one laundry that is like cool and that captures your attention and that you feel like, oh my God, that's like a cool laundry, like the Uber of laundry or something? That, no. So how can we disrupt people patterns? There's a one thing in marketing called pattern disruption, where basically you work on the paradox. Laundry is extremely boring. Okay, how do we create something that makes laundry, whoa, like that punch effect that is completely like reverse the model that laundry is actually, wow, it doesn't look boring. So what is not boring? What is not boring is festivals. And I have like this Indian headgear from when I used to go in festivals, like this native Indian headgears, with the feathers, etc., that happened to be the same color of the logo. And back then we were stuck with the ads. I still remember the founder saying like, no, Facebook ads doesn't work for us or whatever. And because we were using stock images like, hey, buy, like whatever, wash everything, 20 whatever dirhams, and you see like that stock photo of someone smiling, and so I just started taking like a phone, put the headgear on, and just doing like talking to people and say, hey, you guys need, like, I can wash your laundry for only that. And the first time people would ignore you, but then you can't ignore that. You can't ignore someone that in ads, while you're scrolling your Instagram stories, come up with something like this. You simply can't ignore it. And so we saw that it was really working, and then we doubled down, and we grew pretty much like almost 6x in 6 to 7x in terms of revenue, thanks to Instagram ads, Instagram stories. And we were one of the first ones to actually advertise on Instagram stories. And Facebook even made a case study on us. So I think we did a pretty decent job now.
Yeah, most probably. And do you have any advice for people not only entrepreneurs, by the way, but also team manager or business managers that are trying to scale or grow their businesses? What would be the first advice that you would give to them?
Listen to your customers. Like I mean, right now with Urban Monks, we're a team of 7 people in total, and we've been working with more now than 70 startups altogether. And the things that I see over and over is that one mistake, that small mistake, that 20% mistake that makes 80% of all the troubles, is about being stuck in your own mind and do not listen to customers. We live in a moment of history where customer centricity, like being customer centric, is not even, it's becoming like a rule of gravity. If you do not respect customer centricity, your business will crash. No questions asked. And still, we are so not good at doing it. And 80% of the mistakes that I see in founders today, they all come to that one thing, is that they get stuck into their own head, into their own assumptions, into what they think is right, and into how great their business is. You need to get out of the equation what really matters. What really matters is the customer. And if you can do that exercise of utter empathy, that is basically, I can take off my brain and I can take on the brain of my ICP or my buyer persona, that's when the party starts. It takes training though. It takes training, it takes expertise. Like, it doesn't just come out of like, okay, let me try this. Like, there's clear frameworks, there's clear methodology to get that, and there's a proven system to get to that. It's the result of a journey. It's not just start doing this. I mean, otherwise you would have already done it if it's something natural.
All right, cool. And then you started Urban Monks. That was in March 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll talk a bit more about that in the second part. For the first part about your journey and how you got there, I just have one more question, one single question that I'm asking to all of the guests that come to the podcast. So tell me about something that you were always convinced was true until you realized it is not.
Interesting. I've always been like a freak of frameworks, and I've always thought that there has to be a structure, there has to be a framework for it to work. What I'm getting to an understanding right now is that the more I get into this entrepreneurship and this, especially this online entrepreneurship or this online economy, the more I see that there are things that do not respect frameworks, there are things that do not respect rules, and still they work much better than something that has followed things by the book. Sometimes you need to take that framework and just drop it and start, just like going with something that is deeper, which is intuition. And this is where I'm really focused right now, because I think after doing this for a while now and understanding all the frameworks, etc., then you go to a stage where the framework can only get you to a certain level. And then you're so good at those frameworks, you have the theoretical base system, and then that's where you start going in intuition. And that's where it's going to be probably my next step. That's where I'm really working on. Drop the frameworks, focus on intuition, and build out of there.
This was the first part of our discussions with Nelio Leone. We hope you were inspired by his journey and experiences. Next week, we will release part 2 of the podcast, in which we will discuss more about Urban Monks and how he is applying his experience and expertise to help startups and companies unlock their growth potential. Don't hesitate to follow us on Spotify, to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast streaming platform to be notified when we make a new upload. This is the Future Club podcast brought to you by Scopernia. Thank you so much for listening.